most important aspects to creating a manga or comic is having really good dialogue and script writing. Without the proper script writing and dialogue, it can make your manga fall flat even if you have a really good storyline. When dialogue is used in the right proportions, it can help keep your story interesting and make your readers excited to know what happens next. So how do you write good dialogue in your own manga or comic? That is what I will be talking about in today's video. So in today's video, I want to try and cover all aspects of script writing, and that includes writing comic script writing, writing manga script writing, and overall improving your dialogue writing. First of all, when writing script, I assume you already have a good plan and a good idea of where you want to go in your story. If you don't know yet where you want to go in your story, I made this video last week on how to actually plan out your manga, comic, or light novel, so I really recommend you check that out. So for this particular video, I will be dividing it into two parts. In the first part, I'll be talking about how to write comic and manga scripts in 3 different methods, and in the second part I'm going to be talking about how to improve your dialogue writing overall to make it a lot better and more interesting to your readers. So once you have a good plan for your script writing and you know exactly what kind of scene you want to write, it's now time to go further and actually write a good script for this scene in order to properly convey how that scene should be seen. When I'm writing a scene, I first like to write a very rough draft, and this draft might have little concepts of dialogue that I might write and also small directions on how the scene will go. I write this draft so I can get an idea of if this scene would work and if I need to change anything in order to make it sound good. You don't have to do this, but I find that it really helps me when I'm trying to get the ideas out of my mind and know exactly what I'm working with. So here is an example of how I'd write a rough draft to begin with. School rooftop. There's birds flying in the distance. Girl is standing on the roof looking out at the birds as if wistful. Boy runs upstairs in the background and door flies open. Girl doesn't turn but she raises her head. She heard him. Boy says something about finding her here. They have a confrontation but the girl does not look at him until he tells her something startling. She turns and he smiles knowingly, saying the truth to her. She asks him how he found out and he says she will give herself away if she says things like that. The scene ends with the boy saying he wants to know more and he sent himself. So as you can see, this is a really rough plan of a scene. It obviously hasn't got all of the details, but it's just there to help me get the ideas out of my mind so I know exactly what kind of scene I want to write. Usually I'll do this if I have too many ideas and I just don't really know which ones I want to focus on. Writing them down really quickly into a rough draft like this allows me to have time to consider the scene and see if it is something that will work in my story. From here, I go through that plan and I end up writing script and dialogue and further detail it in order to make it more appropriate for a script. Now again, you don't have to do this, I just thought I'd mention it because it's something that helps me in my own manga writing process. Now that we've talked about the planning, I want to show you how you can specifically write a manga or comic script. So there are a few ways to write a manga or comic script, and some of these methods here are the more professional method, and the other ones here are also some of my own methods that I like to use when I'm writing my own script. How you choose to write your own manga or comic is completely up to you. I have 3 different methods here that I want to show you today. So the first method is professional script writing. This is the method that people would use in professional screenplays. Now I don't use this method personally because it seems to need a lot of formatting and a lot of details which I feel like aren't fully necessary for the manga that I want to create. However, if this is a method that would suit you, then by all means choose this method. I'm going to be showing you how you can write in a professional screenplay way for your own manga or comic. So at the start of a professional script writing scene, they would have fade in because that's where the scene fades in. Then you have EXT school name, 1:25 PM. This tells us where the scene is taking place and at the time of day or night. Among the bustling city is a tall building with the sign school name printed on the side in embossed letters. High school students mill outside the building but it's mostly quiet outside. This is the description of where the scene is taking place. Then we have fade to, which is the scene transition instructions. This applies more to film editing rather than comic writing. Then we have INT, meaning interior, school name, rooftop, 1:25 PM. Girl is standing on the rooftop gazing out at the city below. She watches a bird in the sky above her with a wistful gaze. Characters' names on their first introduction should be written in capitals. The rooftop door. Boy walks through the rooftop door and pauses when he sees girl. Girl does not turn but her head raises slightly. She heard him enter but does not wish to acknowledge him. Boy. So the character speaking is above the dialogue and in the center. I knew you'd be up here. You always liked watching the birds, didn't you? Girl still looks out at the city and does not reply. Boy steps closer, caution in his expression but not in his steps. Boy, you don't like being caged. You want to fly too, right? As he gets closer, girl turns, a scowl on her face. Girl, why do you keep following me? Stop pretending you know me. Boy is taken aback for a moment and then smiles mysteriously. I know you better than you know yourself. Girl looks at the ground away from his face. So you can place an action or a description about the character's emotions here just above the dialogue. Those rumors are not true. I'm not talking about the rumors, I'm talking about you, real name. Girl looks stunned for a moment and then she scowls. Girl, who sent you? Boy smiles, clearly amused by this. You'll give yourself away if you say things like that. Girl looks at him expectantly and he sighs, resigned. It was me. I sent myself. If the same character is talking on the next page, you need to write the dialogue like this to let the readers know that there is more on the other side. Boy, I knew you'd be up here. You always liked watching the birds, didn't you? More, and then you turn the next page and then you have boy continued. You don't like being caged, you want to fly too, right? So that's how you write your script in a professional scriptwriting method. Now again, this is a very formatted and detailed way to write it, and this is more suited for screenplays. However, this method can also suit if you want to use it for your own comic or manga scriptwriting. So my second method in this video is basic scriptwriting. Now this is the method that I use when I am writing my own manga scripts, and it's not the most detailed method and it's not the most formatted method, but it's a way that I like to do it that keeps it really simple in my own mind. If you're working with an artist, then it may not be the most detailed way to describe the drawings, because usually in this method I describe the scenes more and the character's dialogue rather than what is happening artistically in every single panel. Let me go further and I will show you an example of this basic scriptwriting method. Show school building, then closer image of school rooftop. Show the girl on the rooftop staring out at the city. Her eyes are drawn to a bird in the sky. She looks up at it wistfully as if she wants to fly too. The boy rushes up the stairs to the rooftop, then throws open the door. He pauses when he sees the girl, relief on his face. The girl doesn't turn, but her eyes dart towards where the boy is. She knows he is there. The boy pauses for a moment and then approaches. I knew you'd be up here. You always liked watching the birds, didn't you? Girl doesn't respond and boy walks closer. You don't like being caged. You want to fly too, right? The girl looks more annoyed as he approaches. Once he gets really close, she turns, glaring at him. Why do you keep following me? Stop pretending you know me. The boy looks stunned for a moment and then smiles mysteriously. I know you better than you know yourself. She clenches her fists, looking down. The rumors are not true. I'm not talking about the rumors. I'm talking about you, real name. The girl gasps. She is completely shocked for a moment, and then she looks away, covering her fear with a false, determined expression. Who sent you? You'll give yourself away if you say things like that. The girl stares, waiting for an answer. He sighs. It was me. I sent myself. So this is how I write my own manga scripts. It gives me exactly enough information on how the characters should act, what they should do, and the things they say. It might not be suited to everyone, but it's a method that I have found over the years that has really helped me in my own script writing. As I mentioned, this may suit someone who is drawing and writing the manga themselves, and if you're working with an artist, you may want to choose the next script writing method I talk about, which is more suited towards that. However, if you're drawing and writing it yourself, you would likely have an idea in mind of how the scene would look, and that's usually the way I write this script on my own. It's because I can envision in my own mind what each panel is going to look like, and then I can draw it and storyboard it based off this basic script. But it might not suit someone who is working with an artist. So it's really up to you what kind of script writing method you choose for your own project. So my third script writing method is the comic script writing method. This is the usual professional comic script writing method that most professional comic or manga creators would use. If you're working with an artist, this may be more suited since it is based off each page and each panel. Or even if you're just drawing it yourself, this might help you to know exactly what's going to happen in every single panel and in every single page. This can also help you to plan for double pages as well. Page 1. Panel 1. Wide shot showing the school building surrounded by the city. The school rooftop is seen, and in the distance you can see a girl standing on the rooftop. Panel 2. Closer image of girl standing on the rooftop. She is looking through the mesh fence down towards the city. Panel 3. A bird squawks in the sky. Panel 4. Girl stares up at the bird. Panel 5. Girl looks away with a wistful expression. Page 2. Panel 1. Boy walks up the stairs to the rooftop. Panel 2. He opens the door. Panel 3. He stares at the girl's back as she looks down towards the city. Panel 4. The boy walks closer. I knew you'd be up here. You always liked watching the birds, didn't you? Panel 5. The girl's eyes dart to him, but she doesn't turn around. Panel 6. The boy walks closer and continues talking. Show a close image of his face. You don't like being caged. You want to fly too, right? So that's how you would write a professional comic script. It focuses more on what is happening in each of the pages and the panels, and as I said, this would suit you more if you were probably working with an artist and wanted to give them descriptions on what is happening in every single page. So these are the 3 methods of script writing that I wanted to show you in today's video. I'm sure there are many more out there, but with these 3 methods of basic script writing, you should be able to get a head start on creating script and know exactly how to structure your script writing and your dialogue for your own projects. So the second part of this video is where I talk about how to improve your dialogue. Now, I must admit, dialogue is actually something I used to struggle with so much. It used to be such a difficult part of script writing for me. However, with these tips, I actually managed to improve my script writing, and it's actually one of my favorite parts of the process now. So I want to give you these tips on how you can actually improve your own dialogue, make it sound a lot more better, and make it more interesting to your readers. So my first tip is keep your dialogue very simple. Cut out parts if you need to. This was one of the main things I found that I really struggled with when I was first writing my dialogue as a beginner manga writer, because I just wrote so much. I wrote way too much dialogue than was necessary. And when we talk to people, we actually cut down a lot of the words we say, and we end up saying very simplified sentences. And that should be the same for your own manga or comic script writing as well. Your characters aren't going to just blurt out this major piece of dialogue. They're going to actually cut down their words, and there will be moments when they might be interrupted or someone else might join the conversation. So it's not always going to be this big bit of dialogue. You need to cut it down and try and keep their words as simplified as possible. This also applies if the dialogue feels too detailed or they use these really big words that would be unnatural to that character. Now, my second tip is make sure every part of the dialogue is important. Never have small talk in your manga or comic. You want to really make sure that every piece of dialogue you have is something that's really important and crucial to your story. If you can cut it out and the story is not going to change, then you need to rethink that dialogue and make sure that it is something important. That piece of dialogue could be giving some information. It could be telling us something about the character. It could be bringing the story forward. But we need to make sure it's always doing something, because if it's not doing anything, then it doesn't have a part in the story. I mean, as a really introverted person, I really hate small talk, and it can get boring. Small talk can get boring, and it can feel boring as well in your manga or comics. You want to make sure that the conversation always remains interesting. So every time you write dialogue in a scene, look at your dialogue and consider, is this dialogue necessary? Is this dialogue moving the story forward? And make sure it is always doing that. Make sure it's always something that's crucial to your story. Now, my third tip is give your character a unique way of talking. Give them their own voice. Now, everyone has their own voice and their own patterns of speaking. And with this, I recommend you listen to different people, even just on YouTube. Listen to vloggers and think about the ways they speak. Look at other people's channels and think about, how does this person speak? People have accents or slang, or they even just have little patterns of speech that make their voice unique. In your world building, you may even add new words that mean something to the world of your story. In any case, your characters should have a special way of saying things. Every character. What you ultimately want to do is you want to be able to have a piece of dialogue and see if you can pick which character is saying that without the character's name or image being there. If you can look at a piece of dialogue and know exactly who is saying it, then you've written that character well and their dialogue makes sense for their character. You want to make sure that your readers can know exactly who is talking just from the way they are saying things. My fourth tip is record yourself saying the lines. Now, this was actually a complete game changer for me, because I used to just read the lines out in my mind, and I know it's really embarrassing to say them out loud or record yourself saying the lines, but it can actually help so much, because when we are reading something or reading something out loud, in this case, you naturally would change it into your natural speaking voice. So as you are reading a script, you would automatically automatically notice where things may sound off or where things may seem unrealistic. So you need to look over your dialogue, read it out loud, and think about the parts that you may stumble on or parts that may sound unrealistic when you say it, and then actually change those lines to make it sound more natural. Keep reading your lines out loud and changing little bits here and there until it sounds much more natural. My fifth tip is use show and not tell in your dialogue. They don't have to say everything. Now, I actually went more fully into talking about how to use showing and not telling in your manga in one of my Q&A videos, and you can check out that video right here. But as well as this, when you're using showing and not telling in your dialogue, what you want to do is you want to have a good balance between what your characters are saying and what their body language is saying, because in many cases, we don't actually say everything, and sometimes we don't even say what we mean. Our body language can be a lot more expressive, and also sometimes things just don't need to be said. Sometimes silence is the best response to things. Like that thing, you have the right to remain silent. Your characters have the right to remain silent as well. They don't always have to say everything. So ultimately, when you're creating your dialogue, you want to find a good balance between having your characters saying things out loud and then having them telling things to the readers from their body language, from the way they're acting, and even their silence. Ultimately, you want to think about, what do they mean by this, and are they saying what they mean on the surface? There's always the surface level of a character development, and then there's the underlying level. My sixth tip is avoid long paragraphs of dialogue. Make sure to break that up, because your readers don't want to have this long paragraph of text that your character is saying. They're just there like, blah, 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 and your readers are like, what is this? They're saying so much. It just gets way too much to absorb, and so you don't want that. You don't want a complete wall of text over your manga page, or even just having way too many words in a small little text box. That's way too much. You want to make sure you break it up. You want to make sure that there may be another character interrupting them, or other things might interrupt them. You break it down through panels, and even if you have a whole lot of dialogue that you want to say in a scene and you think that dialogue sounds good, avoid pushing it into a single panel and try and break it up over multiple panels or through multiple characters saying things, or even just using showing and not telling, because sometimes you don't have to have the character say everything. Basically, if you feel like you have to take a breath after reading all these lines, or you feel like you're completely out of breath, then it's way too much dialogue and you need to cut it down. My seventh tip is swivel between the characters who are talking. Think of it kind of like table tennis, like one character's hitting the ball across the table and the other character is hitting it back, and it's going back and forth between the characters, and it's never staying on one character too long. It's always going from one character to the next. If you have a group scene, make sure that it's always going to a different person, like they're playing catch, like they throw the ball to one person, they catch it, they say something, they throw it to the next person, and those are weird examples, but you get what I mean. It can't just stay on one character all the time. It needs to switch between characters, and it needs to give each character their own moment in the story. But of course, you don't always have to have every person saying something, and that brings me to my final tip for improving your dialogue, and that's the eighth tip. You need to show a character's personality in their dialogue. Because not everyone is always going to be saying everything. A confident person might say a lot more things than a shy person would. If there's a group setting and there's lots of characters, of course they all need to have their moment in the story, but sometimes body language can say a lot as well. You don't always need to have every single character speaking, but allow their dialogue to show what kind of character they are. If they are a more egotistical person, then that would likely show in their dialogue. If they're confident, then that would show. If they're shy, that would show. And I recommend you look at other anime characters and see how their dialogue reflects their personality, but also look at people in your own life and think about their personality traits and how they show their traits in the way they talk. So that's how you can write an awesome script for your own manga or comic. I hope this video helped to give you some ideas on this creative process. If it did, please let me know in the comment section down below. Let me know what kind of scripts you're going to be writing in your own manga or comic, because I would love to hear about it. Feel free to tap me on any of my social media at @MinnoisCross, because I always enjoy hearing from you. Again, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!